Welcome to the Sarah Finkelstein Show, where the next 10 minutes can change your life. Also on Spotify, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio. Here's Sarah.
Hello, audience. And I want to show you my business card, which has two questions that they are fears, two major fears that Americans have. And the first one is Americans' number one fear is running out of money. And today's segment, we're going to talk about, is the fear of running out of money justified? And if you're like many people that I talk to, you're probably saying yes, for many, many reasons, which I want to delve into with you. So the first reason that people are concerned about running out of money before running out of life is because people are living longer than ever before. And some people will say, I never expected to live so long. People in their 80s, people in their 90s. And my husband's grandmother just turned 100 a couple of months ago. She did not expect to live to such a ripe old age. But guess what? Her oldest sister lived to be 106. So it can happen to you and also to your family. Living a long life is a tremendous possibility. But with that fact comes the skill of planning appropriately so that you don't run out of money before you run out of life. You know, Benjamin Franklin said, people do not plan to fail. They just fail to plan. And I got to stress this over and over and over again. Planning is so very important. Another reason that people are concerned about running out of money is because many of us have just not saved enough for our future, our retirement years, our golden years. It is so important for all of us to save during our working years so we could amass a pot of money that will last us for the rest of our lives. Another issue I see is that most of us have an insufficient emergency fund. Some of us have no emergency fund whatsoever. So what is the process of having an emergency fund? Well, the reason for having one is to take care of, guess what? Yes, emergencies, things that happen unexpectedly, things that happen to us in our decades that we don't anticipate. An emergency could be needing a new refrigerator or a new set of tires, or maybe fixing the roof on your home. Those are all emergencies, and your emergency fund needs to be liquid. In other words, you can access it at a moment's notice without any penalties whatsoever. Another issue is people have too much debt. Now, as we get closer to retirement, hopefully, ideally, you want to be debt-free in retirement. Now, maybe you might still hold a mortgage, but you really want to avoid having credit card balances or other debts. Because remember, when you're not paying those debt payments, monthly installments, whatever it may be, that's more money in your pocket. And we're going to need more money in our pockets in our latter years. Another issue is lack of insurance, especially the right insurance, the right type of insurance. For example, Medicare. Do you have the government plan or the non-government plan? Do you have the plan that you pay now or pay later? Typically, when we pay later, we end up paying more. Also, the right type of long-term care policy. And I do hope that you are doing long-term care planning for yourself and your loved ones. And let's not forget life insurance. Life insurance comes in many different varieties. Do you know what you have? Do you know how much you need? And do you know which is the right type for you? These are very important questions so that you can be properly positioned to enjoy a carefree and happy retirement. Also, we live in an instant gratification society, right? We want what we want and we want it now. Gone are the days of layaway. Now we all have plastic in our pockets and we can buy whatever we want with our heart's desire. But that may not be the best long-term plan, your long-term vision for your future. You know, it's so much easier to spend money on the things that we want as opposed to spending money on the things that we need. And which is more important, the things that we want or the things that we need? I'll leave that to you. Another issue that we are encountering right now is inflation. Inflation is high, higher than the reported numbers are. Why do I say that? Because I feel it when I go into a supermarket and buy groceries. It feels to me like inflation is more like 20, 25%, or even 30%. I'll go into a produce place that I love to shop at, and last week the cucumbers were $1 each. This week they're $1.29. That's 30% more. So inflation is very high. And the rule of 72 shows us how many years before we need twice as much money to keep up with inflation. So for example, if inflation were 5%, we divide 5 into 72, and we know that in 14.4 years, we're going to need twice as much money just to maintain the same standard of lifestyle that we have today. If inflation is 10%, then we know that in 7.2 years, we're going to need twice as much money to maintain our standard of living. And here's a big one that really hardly anyone wants to talk about or think about, but it is unexpected healthcare costs in retirement. Now, retirement healthcare is not just about Medicare. It goes way beyond that. There are things that happen to us, again, unexpectedly, that we might need. Did you know that 70% of people over the age of 65 will need long-term care at some point? Do you know that that equates to 2 out of 3 people? That's huge. Take a look at your grouping of people. Every 3 people, 2 of them will need long-term care. And oftentimes, people think that it's not going to happen to them. It will happen to somebody else, but not to them. And the issue with not planning for this is that most times people will deplete their retirement nest egg to pay for long-term care, or they'll sell their home to pay for long-term care. So again, it boils down to planning, and planning now is better than planning later, because later you may not be able to qualify for the coverage. So I always tell my clients and my friends and my associates, please have a conversation with your loved ones. Talk to your parents and find out, have they thought about long-term care? Have they done any planning? And if they haven't, please encourage them to do so, because it's always better to pay with pennies on the dollar than many, many dollars when you have to pay 100% of the cost out of your own pocket. And another issue that I always like to bring up to people is your beneficiary forms. Are they up to date? Because if they're not up to date, then your loved one that you intend to get your inheritance may not be the one who's going to get it. And lastly, the safe money formula. I wrote an article about this in the Palm Beach Post a number of years ago. And basically, the safe money formula is based on age. So as we get older and older, the less of our nest egg should be at risk. The bulk of our money should be safe and guaranteed and not subject to losses. Now, we know the market goes up and the market goes down, and eventually it goes back up. But what if it goes down at the worst time for you, when you are in your beginning of your retirement years? It could have a drastic effect on you and your loved ones. So yes, the fear of running out of money is justified, very justified. I hope those tips have helped you. And you can always go to www.financialfitnessforever and download a free report.
Knowledge is power, but only when you implement what you've learned to your own benefit. Tune in next time for even more powerful tips on the Sarah Finkelstein Show.